Hello, and thank you for joining us at this year's Children's Media Conference. I'm Lauren Layfield. I am a TV and radio presenter, and I'm going to be a host of this session on co-creation. We're going to be taking a closer look at co-creation and finding out what it means to engage young people in the area of co-creation. So first of all, I'd like to do some introductions. I'd like to welcome founder and CEO of League Leaders, founder and creative director of Triple Double, Paul Jenkins. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Lauren, how you doing?
Very good, thank you. We've got director, scriptwriter and producer behind the Danish user-generated youth series Centrum, Jonas Risvig. Hi, Jonas.
Hey, how are you doing?
Catherine Rittman-Smith, who is Head of Learning and Engagement at Young V&A, which is an East London branch of the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is opening in 2023. Good evening.
Hey there, great to be here.
Oh, good. And also to Katrin Boschinger Christiansen, who is a PhD fellow in the Collaborative Research Project, Reaching Young Audiences. Hello, Katrin.
Hello, Lauren. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So that's our sort of introductions done. I'd love to know why you think co-creation is so important.
Our vision for Young V&A is really prompted from what we've heard from children. We commissioned some research a while back from Beano Brain, who asked Gen Alpha what they thought of museums, and 44% of them said museums were boring. And it's kind of not surprising, really. But it was not necessarily a wake-up call, but a real I guess, motivator for us to think about what a museum could be for Gen Alpha and for future generations as well. And we're just thinking, how can museums inspire kids? And I guess part of that thing about them potentially finding a museum boring is like, how do we make it relevant? How do we make it an active place for them? And so the best way to do that is to work directly with them. Every time we're surprised. Children and young people see things differently. They spot things that we don't see. They find magic in things that we've forgotten about. And I think that kind of connection is really important for us as professionals as well, to have that thread. And so the work we're trying to do is genuinely setting up collaborations between grown-ups and experts and children who can bring their life experiences and their perspectives and their brilliant imaginations and their new spark when they see something for the first time to the way that we're shaping the museum. And we're hoping that helps us find ways that raise issues, that present things in ways that are relevant, that genuinely inspire, so it's a place that they want to come and they want to hang out. And so far, so good, I think.
And how about you then, and Katrin, is that something you feel similarly about when it comes to your drama?
At the moment, I see that co-creation is a buzzword within the television and film industry. And Jonas, you're very welcome to correct me, but it's like it's a buzzword and everyone wants to do it, but do not necessarily know how to. So obviously for me, it's interesting to look upon cases and productions that facilitate co-creational processes and initiatives in different ways. The first case study that I did was the one on Klassen that we actually produced an article about. But the very interesting thing about Klassen is that they incorporated those junior editors, which are actually children aged 10 to 12-year-olds, who's actually there to give feedback to the production team and the writers about actually staying relevant to what it's like being a child today, and to safeguard that the production of Klassen, which is actually a series that is in its 12th season. At the moment, it has 712 episodes, so that's amazing. It's part of the affordable fiction format that the public service broadcast of DR are very keen on producing at the moment in reaching those kids and young audiences.
Pretty much every project that me and my teams work on is centered around co-creation and working directly with audiences, specifically young people. I agree with Katrina around kind of the terminology of co-creation, and I think there's a lot of kind of mystery around it. I also agree there's not a recipe, but there are ingredients for sure.
Paul, tell us about ActiveSnap. It sounds brilliant.
So ActiveSnap was a project that came about originally through the Design Museum's flagship education program called Design Ventura. And the challenge of that competition is to get young people across the country in schools coming up with design and product ideas sort of centered around a theme. We were basically brought in to go take it from essentially kind of, idea prototype into now a fully formed product. It's the game's been commercially released by Tomy. There's been 15,000 copies of the game sold to date, and the boys get a royalty every single time the game is sold. It's based on the traditional card game called Snap, so if everyone's played it. So the difference with this one is losers have to perform hit exercises. So if the 5 of us were playing, and let's say I managed to get 2 down on star jumps, everybody would have to do, I believe it's 10 or 20 star jumps. There's also shadow boxing, planking. So it's a really fun, easy way for young people and families to get active. That's it. That's pretty much ActiveSnap. That's
Hey, fun. I mean, doing any kind of hit workout is not my idea of fun, but it sounds brilliant. Jonas, tell us about Centrum. How's that been working for you?
To me, it's really about, instead of producing fiction that comes from my own imagination, this is really about like looking out and scouting the audience, looking for themes, looking for topics. I think the biggest problem that people do, or the thing that people get wrong, is that they tend to create content just to teach the young people stuff. So during the lockdown, we began producing, me and my team, like small episodes of coming of age fiction that we would just distribute through my YouTube channel and just like lay out there every week. So while everyone was like at home, we would go out and produce, and we would ask like the audience what they wanted to happen in the next episode.
This young person's not only ideas, not only feedback and discussion, but actual ideas is going to input and drive this. And the question is sort of, why is it important? But it's almost, why is it not important? Like, why is this a sort of a thing that's kind of now being thought about? I think there's a few questions to be asking before that of sort of, why on earth are you not sort of speaking to who you're creating something? Why are you not?
What has been the sort of state of co-creation sort of 5 years previous to now? Was it that people were just kind of making stuff, thinking that they knew their audience, sending it on its merry way? And how much has it changed over the last 5 years, would you say?
For me, I think as a professional, so I joined the Museum of Childhood to turn it into Young V&A. So I wasn't there when it was the Museum of Childhood, but it did have a children's forum. And it was really important to ask kids what they thought about stuff. I think that is kind of indicative of the changes that I'm seeing actually. In our sector, we would call that consultation. We ask people, it's like, do you like it like this or like this?
And how do kids normally reply? Kids are people pleasers.
And,
and they'll go, yeah. I love it.
Totally. Or, that is a valid thing to do. It's a valid thing to ask. It's just like, would you come if we put this on or that? And they'll go, only that one. And that's really helpful, but that's not co-creation. One of the key things that all of us who work with children and young people know is that they grow up really quickly and things change for them really quickly. You blink and it's different, and their language is different, and the funny things they say in the playground are different, and the stuff that they want to watch on screens is different, and the games that are cool or not cool are different. It's so quick. And so it's just like, it makes sense to work with them. Co-creation is when you work together to do a thing. So for us, knowing that we were going to build this museum, that it was going to be for children and young people from birth until 14, it kind of had to be a starting point. It's like, how on earth do you go about doing that? We're a very old institution. How do we do this? And so right from the very beginning, all of our professional teams, the architects, the curators, the learning teams, we've all worked in collaboration with young people or children along the way in different ways, but it's all been kind of different guises of co-creation. And so right from the beginning, that's been critical for us, because we have gained so much, but it's enabled us to kind of keep pace. with the realities of the worlds that children live in. And that, I think, has made us so much more confident in what we're building and offering. And I think the knock-on impact of that is that, I guess also reflecting on what other people have said, is that it changes our mindsets because we have this close relationship then with our audiences.
I've been working on the big platforms as well, and I always hear them speak about like, okay, we bring in some young people and we ask them what they think about the scripts and the blah, blah, blah. But in the end of the day, what I see in 99% of all the projects, they hear them, they listen to the kids or the children or the young people, but it's very little. It's a very little percentage of changes they are willing to do when it comes to it. We have to see the differences between research and co-creation, because to me, like, research there's no excuses. Of course you do research. If not, you don't see the full potential of your project. But after research, there comes co-creation. And research is, for instance, in television, if you hand over like 10 scripts or scripts for an episode and you say, do you think that there are any words that we should change? That's just research, because now you're just checking if you can change just like 1% to make it a bit better. Co-creation is to say, we have this one episode, we want it to be a party, and we want it to go completely wrong. We want those two characters to fight, and we want this character to walk home alone because she gets lonely. How should we proceed? How do we come to this result? That's co-creation. When Catherine talks about like letting the young people come into the museum, that's co-creation. It's not about like putting up a museum and ask them to come in and do some feedback in 3 lines and put it in a box, because that's just research for your next project. And I think it's very important for especially directors and producers and writers to see co-creation as a new step in the development of every project. It could be a design project, it could be anything. And not mix it too much together with research, because research comes before that or aligned with co-creation. You can do research all the way through the process and co-creation as well. And we have all the tools, but we need to know how to use them, and we need to know what we want from the young people and from the kids that we are speaking to, because the best way I found out to use them in my development was to make them like to give them the ability to be the ambassadors of the whole project. So in Centrum, the 4 main characters, they would say to their friends, we did this, we created this, like we wrote this. I wanted my character to go this way because I felt it was most authentic and realistic. I think that should be like the aiming point. If you can find the audience and they will say, yeah, we did this together, then you reach your goal. Until then, it's just research. But what we did was that I asked the actors, what should we do to get your friends to watch this? First thing was just to let them improvise everything, to write the story themselves, to like change all the dialogue, to put on their own costumes, to pick the music themselves. And it began to like spread out to all of their friends. And then their friends began to like write to me, okay, you could also do this, you could do that, or let me be a part of it, and blah, blah, blah. And then it like spread it all over the country. So we kind of reached the same amount of like audience peaks that they would do on the bigger platforms. And it has been a cool transformation, because now I'm working on the biggest platforms in Scandinavia, but I'm still doing the exact same workflow. This is a new way to work, especially with the young people. And I'm just like the other 3. I'm very I see that we've been talking about co-creation as research, like research as co-creation for many years now. And I really think that the projects that will survive and the projects that will get the attention from now on will be the projects that really take co-creation seriously, all the way from to the end.
In my opinion, if I am to address that, I don't think you can put on some sort of recipe for how to co-create. You have to look upon like, what do you want to say? Who's your audiences? What are you trying to say? In which way? Like your approach. So I don't think there's a co-creation recipe.
I think co-creation as a term, I think there's the 4 people on this call probably have a lot to say around kind of, from my perspective as well, like demystifying it as much as possible. I mean, for me, like working with young people, that's my purpose. And it goes back to, when I was at school, I was being forced to do sort of physical activity the way that I was being told to, but I said, why can't it be this way? And actually through sheer kind of through force and just kind of eventually just saying, do you know what, Paul, get on with it. I could actually decide, I actually was able to kind of bring sport into like my own curriculum the way that I wanted to do it. And so that planted the seed for me to say, hang on, there's got to be a better way here.
You can think about co-creation as a method or as a strategy for actually producing content in order to reach those difficult audiences, and also as a mindset. And in that mindset, I guess what I was thinking about when Paul talked is that obviously when you produce something, you have to agree on that whatever you write or produce is negotiable, because you let some of the control out to the users. And I guess that figuring that out, why that is worthwhile doing, is probably a challenge within at least film and television. Isn't necessarily the only way to do so.
Jonas, at what point did you go, right, let's speak to the people I'm making this for? Where were you in your journey of creating Centrum?
Definitely from my first thought. So I knew that I wanted to do a series, coming of age series, about 4 young people in the age of 15. That was it. From that point, I knew I had to speak with the audience, and I still do that. I just finished my new series about sexuality in high school, and I knew from the start I have no idea where to start. I need to ask out. On my Instagram, on my social media, we have so many tools to do the co-creation, and I think I totally agree with all of the others.
I've just finally submitted my first book. So it's gone, it's off, and it's aimed at that kind of teen audience. And I was writing it during lockdown. So the opportunity to go and speak to young people was very difficult. So it's interesting you said things like Instagram and TikTok. I just put it onto Instagram. I said, like, look, you know, here's an issue, you know, how would you deal with it or whatever. And the influx, I've never had so many messages ping into my account. They want to be involved and they want to help. It's just probably about whether we are willing to listen is probably half of the battle, right? So, Paul, what do you think the challenges are if you know, producers or organizations or companies, whatever sector they're in, they want to venture into co-creation? What are the difficulties? Because there must be difficulties if, you know, people aren't just flinging themselves at it right away.
People come to us and say, you know, we hear you're good at co-creating and doing stuff with young people. And what I would say to them is your whole team, your organization, all those people, are they bought in? You're into this, but is everybody else?
I guess also reflecting on what other people have said is that it changes our mindsets, because we have this close relationship then with our audiences and we think of them differently. Our product, our kind of intellectual idea is all around creativity. By working closely with children and young people to make a thing together, actually we're viewing each other differently. It's not their kids, they can only do X, Y, Z, or, you know, won't they be glad to learn about. Actually, we're learning from each other. And I think it's changed, you know, in society in general. I think the hierarchies shift around a little bit. And there've been a lot of things about, you know, bringing new voices into the way that we make content in all sorts of different spaces. And so I think that has been one of the really big things. But it changes the role of creatives themselves as professionals, that it's not just like the genius thing that we're going to bring and everyone's going to go, aren't you amazing? It moves us to a space where there's much more honesty about the real collaboration that's always happened, but actually is now kind of a proud part of the process. And I think that I would love to see more of.
I love this idea of kind of it's challenging the kind of notion of what creatives are doing. For me, like, it's around the sort of, to be a really good creative, you've got to be a facilitator. You cannot do everything on your own. I think the main thing is really lacking, like, the ambition, that it's not just a tick box exercise. Like, I can't remember who said it earlier, but some of the stuff that, not just young audiences, but any audiences, you know, if we were talking about different kinds of audiences that can unlock because you're not them, is so key. But when it comes to working with young people, some of the stuff they come out with is unbelievable. Like, and all it takes is that sort of facilitation and, you know, having the right infrastructure, having the right skills.
What most companies don't realize is that if you start your co-creation very wisely. And if you prioritize it, it's actually one of the most like beneficial and cheapest way to market your product or your project. It's marketing. Like whenever I start a TV series, I would go like broad public with my co-creation, so everybody knows that I'm developing a series right now that will come out later this year. So it's a really intelligent way of already get your audience into the project, and you keep them as ambassadors, and they will speak to their friends that this is coming and blah blah blah. A lot of them will tell you things that they might regret, or they might like send you 100 ideas of stuff that you can implement in your series, or in your film, or in your project. And it's very hard to implement everything, and it sounds very like silly. But for me, for instance, right now I've been developing this series about sexuality in high school, and you could go like hundreds of ways. You could take so many different takes on this topic, but I have to like make the decision on which direction will we go. So a lot of people will also be disappointed because they participated in co-creation and they didn't see their ideas come through.
I think a challenge that we haven't talked about, what Jonas, you were alluding to, is just about the ethic of credit and kind of how we work with young people and how we acknowledge who's helped to make a thing as well. I think that can be a really tricky thing to handle depending on how you have co-created in the first place. And I think young people are getting more and more savvy, that they are incredibly generous and enthusiastic, but we also have to recognize the kind of what they give of themselves to making these things together collaboratively.
What these young people have done is they are driving direct and indirect value, brand perception to you, and actually that is measurable. Just as like our time, whether you're funding us, is measurable. So yeah.
What is the single most important way that co-creation can make a substantial difference? I'll take that over to Catherine first, if that's all right.
How do you pick one? Authenticity and then ownership are the two things for me. Like, I'm cheating because I've got two. But authenticity is about tapping into the ideas, the concerns, and the relevancy. And I think that's really important. And ownership is something that young people will share for you, that they will naturally want to go to, that they'll feel some sort of affinity or pride or connection to.
For me, it is giving young people the right to have a say on something that is made for them, whether that is a product decision in terms of like marketing campaign, to an exhibition, to a sort of a physical activity experience. Having the right to have a say, or in our case, having the right to design how they're physically active, for me is the one thing around co-creation. Because young people, we don't always, as humans, we don't always get a say on stuff. But if we've got the opportunity to, I'm pretty sure most of us will basically have a say on it. And so why is it any different for young people? These young people need to be embedded in these organizations. We need to be creating future employability opportunities. You know, there needs to be a 360 way where there's skill learning, there's these live projects, but then there's the sort of the future employability. And it's not about asking every young person to become a creative or designer, but whether it's film, television, in my case, sport, cultural institutions, museums, from Catherine's perspective, all four of us on this call should be thinking about, well, actually, who are the young people that we should be creating employment opportunities for, and how are we doing that for other organizations? And it's a win-win, because like future workforce is like, it's massive. It's just all these organizations, everybody's is needing, it's not just that I say diverse, but from my perspective, diverse is it starts with skills, and it's also where you're looking for future workforces as well. And it's kind of, they're right under your nose, you're just not sort of considering it. So I did want to add that in as a kind of a long-term thing.
Brilliant, I love it. We are vastly running out of time, I think, probably. So I'm going to ask you all one final question, which is, to any content creators out there, regardless of field, wherever you are, people who want to launch a co-created project, what is the one bit of advice that you would give them? We'll start with Catherine, if that's okay.
I'll say do it, but be clever about how you do it, and also keep in mind the responsibility that you have towards your co-creators. I say do it, try it out, test it, and see what happens.
Lovely stuff. Jonas?
I would say kill your own ego, and remember that you have to be a part of the co-creation, because it's also, sometimes it goes like, okay, we need some young people into the room and let's listen to their ideas. You have to be a part of it as well. You have to come up with dumb ideas in front of them. And if you're the designer or the director, you have to come up with the dumbest idea at first to make them secure, and you have to be a part of the room instead of just listening and taking notes.
Love that. Catherine, one bit of advice for anybody who wants to sort of do what you guys are doing?
I was going to say equalize the space, right? Step down from your pedestal, and it's a co-word. So co leads to collaboration, which means working together. And so I think it's an exercise in shared listening. So probably my tip would be listen and share, and make that space.
Lovely. And final one from Paul.
I don't want to say what Catherine and Jonas said. Maybe a phrase. Our classroom, not my classroom, or our room, not my room. Basically, it doesn't matter about age. It doesn't matter about experience. We're basically both working on the same thing. We're both on the same level. Take that approach with everybody you're working on the project team, and that's the starting point. And it might feel uncomfortable to start with, but after you'll be like, yeah, it's fine.
And what a joy, what a privilege as well that we can do that we can take off our adult hats for a little while and sort of immerse ourselves and feel young again, guys. Isn't it a wonderful thing? Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a joy to hear all of your opinions, and I feel like what you're doing is really making a difference, and fingers crossed that more places will implement it as well. Thank you very much for your time, guys.